Today, we're going to talk about something really cool, the story of how a single chunk of rock, found completely by accident, let us unlock the secrets of an entire civilization that had been silent for, well, for a very, very long time. So just imagine walking through the ruins of ancient Egypt. You're surrounded by these walls, and they're all covered in these beautiful, mysterious symbols, hieroglyphs. For 1,500 years, that's all they were, just pictures. An entire civilization's history, their stories, their beliefs all locked away behind a code nobody could crack. So the big question is, how on earth did they forget how to read their own language? You see, this wasn't a case of people just kind of gradually forgetting over time. No, it was more like a switch being flipped. As the old Egyptian religion began to fade away and Christianity started to rise, the very last people who knew how to read and write these sacred symbols, the priests, they disappeared. And with them, the knowledge just vanished. It was basically wiped out. And this timeline really puts the scale of the problem into perspective. In the 4th century, the last known hieroglyphs are carved. By the 5th century, a whole new script called Coptic, which is based on Greek, totally takes over. And that really severs the final connection to the ancient past. It's not until 1822 that the code is finally cracked. That's 15 centuries of total silence. Just think about that. So, the key to breaking this incredible silence? It wasn't found in some dusty old library or on a carefully planned archaeological dig. Nope. It was found by a soldier right in the middle of a war, pretty much completely by accident. Right, so you've got Napoleon's army in Egypt. A French soldier, a guy named Pierre-François Bouchard, is working on building a fort. They're tearing down an old wall, and what do they find? This incredible stone slab, just being used as regular old building material. But Bouchard knew right away this was something special. He saw one stone with 3 different kinds of writing on it and realized, whoa, this could be big. And here is the absolute genius of it. The stone basically came with its own set of instructions. The bottom section was written in ancient Greek, which scholars could already read. And that last line of the Greek text confirmed what everyone was hoping for. It says the exact same message is written in all 3 scripts. That was it. The game was on. The race to decipher the hieroglyphs had officially begun. But before anyone could even get close to cracking the code, they had to get past this huge mental roadblock. It was a really fundamental mistake that had been tripping up the smartest people for centuries. And this was the big one, what we call the ideographical fallacy. For hundreds of years, everyone just assumed that hieroglyphs weren't like letters in an alphabet that represent sounds. They thought each little picture was a mystical symbol that stood for some deep, complex idea. So instead of trying to translate a language, they were trying to, guess the secret wisdom of the universe? This is probably my favorite example of how completely off track they were. Back in the 17th century, a really famous scholar named Athanasius Kircher translated what we now know was just a simple royal title. And he came up with this epic, mystical sentence about gods and generative forces. It was pure fantasy, a total invention, but it really shows you the mindset everyone was stuck in. So the challenge of breaking free from this huge mistake fell to 2 brilliant and very competitive minds. In the British corner, you had Thomas Young, a total polymath. The guy was a physicist, a doctor, he knew a bit about everything. And in the French corner, you had Jean-François Champollion. He was a language genius, and he'd been obsessed with Egypt since he was a kid. This wasn't just an academic puzzle, it was fueled by a massive national rivalry between Britain and France. Okay, so the stage is set, our 2 rivals are ready to go. Let's dig into how the code was actually broken, step by incredible step. Thomas Young, the British polymath, he made the first big crack in the case. He figured out that those oval rings you see, called cartouches, must contain the names of royalty. And he proved that the symbols inside the cartouche for Ptolemy actually spelled out the sounds of the name. It was a huge breakthrough. But, and this is a really big but, he thought it was just a special trick they used for foreign rulers like Ptolemy, who was Greek. He just couldn't believe they'd use the same system for their own Egyptian pharaohs. And that's where Champollion came in. He had a secret weapon. He had mastered Coptic, which is the direct descendant of the ancient Egyptian language. He knew what the language should sound like. So first he gets his hands on another name, Cleopatra, from another monument. Now he has 2 names to compare. By matching up the symbols that appeared in both Ptolemy and Cleopatra, he started building a working alphabet. And then came the final test. Could he use that alphabet to read the names of actual Egyptian pharaohs? Okay, so this right here, this is basically the aha moment. Champollion looked at the symbols for Ptolemy and Cleopatra side by side. He saw that the first symbol in Ptolemy was the fifth symbol in Cleopatra. That had to be P. The little lion symbol was the fourth symbol in Ptolemy and the second in Cleopatra. That had to be L. The sounds were matching up in different places in the names. It wasn't just symbols, it was an alphabet. And this is what led to the final history-making moment. He took his new alphabet and tried it on a name he'd never been able to read before. Using what he knew from Coptic, he sounded it out. R, A, M, S, S. Ramesses, a true Egyptian pharaoh. He knew he'd done it. The story goes that he ran into his brother's office, yelled, "I've got it!" and then promptly collapsed and fainted for 5 straight days. What a way to make a discovery. So Champollion had found the key. But what he unlocked wasn't just a simple ABC alphabet. Oh no, it was something way more clever and complex. So here's the amazing truth he figured out. Ancient Egyptian writing wasn't just one system. It was 3 systems all working together at once. You have phonograms, which are sounds for sounds, kind of like our alphabet. Then you have logograms, where a picture of a thing, like the sun, literally means that word, sun. And then the really clever part, determinatives. These were silent signs at the end of a word that acted like a category tag, telling you if the word was, say, a god, a city, or an abstract idea. It's just brilliant. And with that understanding, a door was blown wide open, not just to a few kings' names, but to 3,000 years of history, 3,000 years of poetry, science, religion, everyday life. An entire civilization got its voice back. And that moment, right there, was the birth of modern Egyptology. Before the Rosetta Stone was deciphered, studying Egypt was pretty much just a treasure hunt. But afterwards, scholars could actually read the stories on the temple walls and the statues. All those artifacts suddenly had context. It stopped being about finding gold and started being about finding knowledge. You know, the story of the Rosetta Stone is just an amazing reminder that a lost world can be found again. All it takes is some patience, a lot of brilliance, and yeah, a little bit of luck. It really makes you wonder, what other lost languages, what other forgotten histories are still out there, just waiting for their own Rosetta Stone to be found?